Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Great show coming your way today on GoJo and Golic. Lots of fun guests to get to. Plus, we will hop in our DeLorean and go back in time. We'll talk about which decisions do we think teams would take back now that we're a couple weeks into the season. Jalen Naylor going to join the program, and Jayson Fitz, our buddy, going to join us in hour two. All that and more coming your way on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We got a great show coming up, as always. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday on the from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. As Jesse mentioned, fun guests coming up today. Fitzy, Jalen Naylor will be a great time with Fitz. And just before we even get to him, we'll have to get to a developing situation in college football that may affect Week 5 and seasons going forward for a while to come, as UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka announces that some promises were made and not kept, and now he will no longer be playing this season as the starting quarterback for a 3-0 UNLV Rebels team, firmly in the mix for the Mountain West Championship and the college football playoff. So an unprecedented swing of the hammer by one of the players in college football. We'll get to why that happened and how it might affect your team here sooner than later. But Dad, on the NFL level, we noticed something yesterday that we didn't get a chance to talk to that made us stop and go, that's probably not great. For the 49ers, who lost a stunner this weekend to the Los Angeles Rams due to special teams miscues and the unmitigated gall of Matthew Stafford's right arm, we saw the news for one of their many injured players in that game. No George Kittle, no Deebo Samuel, and no Christian McCaffrey, who had been out since the beginning of the season with that calf injury and aggravation of his Achilles. Apparently went to Germany to seek out a specialist. And I don't know about you, Dad, when we hit the going to German specialist portion of the injury prognosis, I start to get a little worried about what's going on this season. And so I'm curious for you, Dad, for 49ers fans that look up after not only a loss this weekend, but then see that news as well out in the ether this week. How concerned should they be about this team missing their Super Bowl window that we know was closing, at least in its current form, this season?
Oh, I would say be concerned, because when you're flying to Germany, you're now outside of the normal rehab. You are going to extenuating circumstances to try and figure out what's going on with your calf. And oh, by the way, Deebo Samuel has a calf as well. So these, I hate to keep saying the three words, soft tissue injury, but they can hang out on you. And we're finding that with Christian McCaffrey, though with McCaffrey, it's also obviously the Achilles is what he's going to Germany for. It's obviously connected. Calf and the Achilles. So yeah, this is the, I don't know if I want to go as far as say desperation, but it's close to desperation. It's modern technology is not working, or at least the modern technology that we are dealing with. So let's go out of the country to try and fix this. And athletes have done this before. Kobe Bryant would go to Germany, and others have gone, across the outside the United States to get to get treatment. But yes, this is a sign that what we're doing isn't working, or we don't know why it's not working, or we don't know why it's not working in a certain amount of time given the injury. So we need to take the next step, and that's, in this case, to Germany. So yes, I would definitely be concerned.
Kyle Shanahan told reporters the other day, I'm not sure what doctor it is. I know he's going to see a specialist that I believe can help him with his Achilles process. I think he's doing that over these next few days. Hopefully it will help. So this is acknowledged by the team. We all know what's going on. And Dad, we mentioned for him, certainly the most versatile piece in an offense that's defined by Swiss Army Knights. George Kittle missed the game this weekend with a hamstring. He's back at practice this week. Juwan Jennings had a monster game in the interim. The offense didn't appear to miss much of a beat in this game, Dad. Jordan Mason was the star early in the season for this team. Juwan Jennings, who they re-signed this offseason to a 3-year deal as they were going through the Brandon Ayuk process, who, by the way, slow start to the season for Brandon Ayuk coming off all the consternation this summer that I'm sure is going to have some 49ers fans grumbling. But in general, Dad, I look at that offense and I don't feel like there was a ton of problems, albeit against a young Rams defense that we know is finding themselves, not the stiffest test, but that offense seemed to pass with flying colors in most every situation this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned Jennings had 11 catches for 175 yards. They put up 24 points, which should be enough. But you look at the kind of like we look at Cincinnati, the defense, because the offense scored 33 points in Cincinnati's loss. San Francisco scores 24, but the defense gives up 27 to the Rams. So the offensive pieces, because there are so multiple pieces, did not seem to dip that much. It just wasn't with the usual names, but they still had production. So I don't know if it's quite worry time for San Francisco. Certainly with Christian McCaffrey, it is. But the injuries we're talking about with Kittle and with Debo, and even Brock is day-to-day with his back. Javon Hargrave is done for the season on defense. He tore his pec. He's going to have, I believe, season-ending surgery. But at least it's early enough in the season where you probably won't dig yourself into too big of a hole to get out of.
No, not the case at this point, but enough of a surprising result for us to stop and consider. We are now through a few weeks of the NFL season, and we've seen a number of surprising things happen. And so we decided we would fire up the time machine today, Jesse, and go back to see if any of the takes that we went into the season with are things that we would like a do-over on at this point in the year. And the 49ers seem like a good place to start.
Yeah, so if you could hop in your time machine and you put a bet on San Francisco here, like to win the NFC, would you go back in time and change that bet if you could, if you had the magic DeLorean in front of you?
So, and there are a lot of people that made this choice, Dad. According to DraftKings Sportsbook, 11% of the handle and 22% of the bets were on the 49ers to win the NFC. 6% of the handle and 8% of the bets were on them to win the Super Bowl. So there's been a lot of people that understandably looked at this roster and said, yeah, this looks like a team capable of winning the Super Bowl. Now, I did see, according to ESPN's FPI the other day, they are still right now, I believe, the second-ranked team, according to that, in the NFL. But how concerned would you be from this standpoint, Dad? If you had bet it on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, which I picked them to make the Super Bowl, I did not pick them to win the Super Bowl, I still feel pretty confident holding that number just because of what we saw this weekend. Even in a losing effort, it happened in my part mostly because of special teams in my mind. How do you feel about that? Would you be taking that ticket back to the booth?
I picked them to lose in the NFC Championship game to Detroit this year, so I actually still feel pretty good about that. You look at their injury woes, but you also have to look at the rest of the NFC and see who is the competition. Is it Philly out of the East? It doesn't seem to be the Cowboys. Washington, I don't think anybody takes too seriously as far as threatening in the playoffs. Minnesota is on a heck of a run. Does that last? Obviously, you have Detroit and Green Bay. The NFC South, do we have to start acknowledging them and not saying they'll just be one team that finishes 9-8 that makes the playoffs? And then, obviously, their own division. Seattle's undefeated. Now, the rest of the teams are Arizona, the Rams, and San Francisco are 1-2. But the Rams obviously just beat San Francisco. Arizona is inconsistent but plays well at times. I actually still feel pretty good about them reaching the NFC Championship game. And like I said, I have them losing to Detroit. But if they were to make the Super Bowl, I don't think I would be panicking on that just yet.
No, I would agree, Dad. And you bring up a good point. It is about as much of who's around them at this point, and what they're capable of. And I think that's worthy of recognizing with them. As far as the actual team, too, I was turning on that tape wondering, because I didn't get to see the game live this weekend, is this going to be the beginning of a Brock Purdy discussion? And the stats certainly didn't beget that at all, but you never know, especially in this offense. Brock this season especially looked really good so far. In this game in particular, completed 12 of his 16 passes for 225 yards, over 10 yards, tying his career high in passing yards on passes over 10 air yards. And the 49ers offense is sort of shapeshifted this year. Usually we think of them as the run after catch offense. I believe this is one of the lower seasons of yards after the catch for this group so far. And Brock Purdy, all those open throws that Shanahan usually schemes up, he's thrown into a tight window on 23% of his total attempts this season. That's the second highest rate in the NFL, according to Next Gen Stats. So he's been throwing to tighter windows without his key weapons out there and still made almost 300 yards happen and put them in position on offense to win this game. So he's been stellar so far this season. And you can see all of the benefits of growing up in an offense that gives you as much as San Francisco does.
And they just do it in a different way. Like I said, yards after the catch, the two studs for that were Christian McCaffrey and Debo. Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield and Debo on those slant routes and just gaining yards after he catches the ball on the run. And they don't have those weapons now, so they're finding another way. Like I said, I don't really put this on the offense, and that's where most of the injuries are. Like you said, special teams certainly hurt them. Defense. Certainly was, and you lose Hargrave, which is a key point on your interior defensive line. So yeah, I mean, I'm not overly panicking. They're one of the MASH units that we go through every year. There's a handful of teams that are MASH units, but they may be a team that's able to overcome them.
I agree. I do think threats could be still in their own division. You saw it with this Rams team. Offensive line got a little bit healthier. If they get some of those other guys back, look out for another Rams late season surge. Jesse, where else can we go in the time machine here? Who else do we want to look at and potentially go back on?
Yeah, how about we go over to Dallas, where the fans are probably not very happy. And Jerry Jones says that it's fair to put the blame on him, okay? He said it's well known that no decision is ultimately made here for what I either have acquiesced to or approved it. That's very fair. How could you think otherwise? Whether it be who's out there coaching, whether it be who's out there playing. So fans are pissed and they're blaming Jerry. But what would Jerry's regrets be? What would he go back in time and fix? Is it the contracts, team building in general, making himself the one that approves everything? What do you think?
Yeah, this the result of a poll from WFAA-TV in Dallas where they asked fans to vote on who they blamed for the Cowboys' start to the season, and 70% of the voters picked owner and GM Jerry Jones. So they pointed the finger squarely there. He gave some weird roundabout answers on a radio appearance the other day about it. And Dad, I think if you're Jerry Jones, this is you. And going back, and I would say the thing that you should change is how you do business in general with this team. The way and the contracts that you've decided to value over the years and the order in which you've got them done have cost you a number of players that, yes, working around the margins with players that are going to cost you as much as CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott and eventually Micah Parsons is one of the difficult parts of NFL GMing, but that's on you to go and get it done early, and it costs you shots at guys like Derrick Henry this last offseason, shots at guys like Jonathan Hankins, who I saw David Hellman talking about, had a chance to sign with either the Cowboys again or with Seattle, signed with the Seahawks, and counts $1.9 million against their cap, and was able to help them out this weekend in a pinch as some of their defensive tackle depth went down. So on down the list, there are areas you could have worked to make your team better in the run game on offense and stopping it on defense, and didn't because you, Jerry Jones, the businessman, have failed this team.
I completely agree. The way he does business is just baffling. This team was bad against the run last year, and they're almost worse against it this year. And they didn't get the proper players. And obviously you got to blame the players that are there too. While I'll go so far as to blame somebody who isn't on the field, trying to perform. You have to get the right pieces in place. And as I said, all offseason, they did nothing in the running game. They're third worst in rushing. And they did nothing to help themselves. Saying that you couldn't afford Derrick Henry, the lowest paid group in football outside of the kickers is the running back position, just means you put yourself in a horrible, horrible position, which is exactly what they're in. So while definitely the buck stops with Jerry Jones and the moves, and as he said, nothing goes through without my approval, well, okay, then this is the team you've approved on.
Yep. The definition of insanity comes to mind when you think about the Dallas Cowboys, who should have paid Dak and should have paid CeeDee Lamb. All of these guys are guys that anyone would look at and say, yes, richly deserving of a payday, but you put yourself in a box with the timeline that you yourself created, Jerry. Speaking of timelines, let's keep moving on ours into the past, Jesse. What do we got next?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of quarterback decisions this offseason. We probably spent, most time talking about the Bears' decision to move on from Justin Fields to go with Caleb Williams. Just doing some Wednesday morning quarterback in here, but we saw so many teams that took a QB also grab a free agent veteran. So at the very least, do you think Ryan Poles regrets not keeping Fields as a backup given the situation he finds himself in?
No, I don't think so on that front. I don't think we're at the point where the Bears have any regrets unless maybe it's about adding more bodies or quality depth to the offensive line or trying to bring in more players there. I understand with that group, a lot of it is homegrown talent that they're invested in trying to see through, at least in the interim. But keeping Justin Fields around would have only invited the level of controversy that comes with that position, Dad, where any other position having competition and depth is something welcome. But we know a quarterback, that gets a little squirrely. And I can understand them not wanting to have their former top 10 pick backing up their current number 1 overall pick for moments like this, where when things go wrong, all of a sudden you've got a bleep storm on your hands in Chicago. I think Caleb Williams, there's still plenty left out ahead of him. Nate Tice pointed out they've given him a lot of control at the line of scrimmage. You see him doing things that indicate later on he's got a chance of being pretty good once the traction takes hold here. So no, I don't think they have any regrets right now in Chicago at the quarterback position.
I don't think so because Justin Fields turned the ball over. Now, Justin Fields did not have the talent around him, sans the offensive line, did not have the talent around him at running back and receiver that Caleb Williams has. But they obviously have issues on the offensive line. But Justin Fields can move better than Caleb Williams to get out of the way, maybe of a bad offensive line. But to say they wouldn't have done this, they were going to do this because Justin Fields was turning the ball over too much. His rookie year, he lost He had 10 interceptions and lost a fumble. He had 9 fumbles and 11 interceptions his second year. He was just dropping the ball too much. Now, he didn't lose all those fumbles, but just losing the ball too much, and you just can't turn the ball over that much. So while I still think Justin Fields is going to be a very good quarterback, I really do. I knew his time was done in Chicago a lot because of the turnovers, but he also did not have the weapons Caleb Williams has had. And I've said I'm not completely sold on Caleb Williams coming out of college. So we'll still see. Obviously, he has time, though time seems to be shorter for top pick quarterbacks. See Justin Fields, though he got 3 years. See Bryce Young, who in his second year has already gotten benched. The clock ticks a little bit faster.
Yeah, I don't think we're in range of that with Caleb Williams at all. You and I differ
no,
on our opinions on him.
No, I didn't
Justin
mean
Fields.
Yeah.
I know what you meant. For Justin Fields, he did leave though because he failed to do what he's doing now in Pittsburgh. Like, I do think looking at that situation, it's an acknowledgement that him and Arthur Smith are kind of doing something right now. You look at Justin Fields for the Steelers through the first 3 weeks, completion percentage over expectation has improved dramatically each week so far. Yards per attempt has gone up every week. His time to throw, Dad, went from 3.06 seconds the first week to 2.71 and 2.72 the next couple weeks. He's making quicker decisions, getting the ball out. We talked about throwing towards the middle of the field. So what Arthur Smith and Justin Fields have started to do and the progress we see him making over in Pittsburgh is a little glimmer of what the folks in Chicago thought they were getting, drafting him high, and what the Pittsburgh Steelers hoped they might get in buying him low. Coming up next, speaking of buying quarterbacks, why college football better get used to a new world order that showed up in Las Vegas quick.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. Guys, we have some really interesting news in college football this morning. UNLV is losing their starting quarterback, Matthew Sluka. He says that promises were not kept, so he's going to redshirt the rest of the season. This is a reminder in the portal era for coaches and programs. They got to keep their promises when recruiting. And you guys, it's 4 games, right? Like, you can't play 4 games. You can only play 3 if you want to take that year to redshirt. So is this something we're going to have to be looking at as we go forward in the portal era?
So you can play 4 games and then redshirt. That's the magic number for college football players. For anyone unfamiliar now, in the new version of these rules, you can still play in a bowl game, play in a postseason game, and not have it count towards that redshirt now. But as far as the regular season, once you get to 4 games, players have to make a decision. There was a player at Notre Dame, Jaden Mickey, who was a reserve defensive back, who just announced the other day that he's going to redshirt and transfer after the season. So week 5 in modern college football is going to start to mean something a little bit different as players have these decisions to make overall. But Dad, in this case, where again, Matthew Sluka put out this statement on his own Twitter account saying that I decided to use my red shirt and not play any additional games. I committed to UNLV based on certain representations that were made to me, which were not upheld after I enrolled. Despite discussions, it became clear that those commitments would not be fulfilled in the future. I wish my teammates the best of luck this season and hope for the continued success of the program. The program, by the way, which is 3-0 for the first time in a very long time, in contention for not only the Mountain West Championship this year, but Dad, as we know, because of the new structure of the expanded playoffs, the college football playoff gives a spot to the highest ranked group of 5 champion, which UNLV absolutely has a chance to be, coming off a big win against Kansas 2 weeks ago. So all these things, Dad, make this a fascinating situation because when people see committed to UNLV based on certain representations, a lot of them are going to immediately jump to name, image, and likeness. And I will say this. There's a lot we don't know about this situation and most situations with player compensation in college football right now. We don't know if he had a contract with this team that was supposed to pay him a certain amount of money. See Jaden Rashada and what happened with the Florida Gators. Or we don't know if things were going well for the team and he walked in and demanded more money in this situation and wasn't given it to him. Because this is so unstructured, there's a lot we don't know about this situation other than this player saw his value in one place right now and the team saw his value in another place. And in college football, this for the player is the leverage that you have. And Dad, you and I were talking about it before the show. It's actually because of the lack of structure in the sport, kind of tilts the leverage in their favor in a way their NFL counterparts don't have.
Oh yeah, in the NFL, you have to play X amount of games. Your year doesn't count. You can't just sit out, or you just roll back that year. This he has a redshirt year. He played 4 years at Holy Cross, and he still has a redshirt year. And as Mike said, he's not going to play in that 4th game. Again, he could play in 4, but the next game is a conference game against Fresno State. They have 2 Power 4 wins, as you mentioned, over Houston and over Kansas. So this is definitely. I mean, I don't think we're guesstimating too much when we say this is a financial decision because the team's 3-0. He's the leading passer and the leading rusher on an undefeated team. So it seems that, as he said, promises were broken. As Mike said, we don't know the inner workings of were there new demands or were promises not kept on the old demands. But this does show that players in college, because the structure is so flimsy, at times have more leverage than their NFL counterparts. Without question, have more leverage.
Yeah. Because what you just talked about there, in the NFL, when you've seen players in the past, Trent Williams, Le'Veon Bell, these guys hold out late into the season looking for extensions on their contract because of the collective bargaining agreement, they've got to show up at some point or they don't get credit for that year. And it prevents them. It takes them further, 1 year further from getting to free agency the way they want to. And so at some point, they run up against a pretty tough backstop. In college football, you've reversed polarity where after 4 games, you've got to decide, hey, I'm withholding my services to prevent or to give myself the opportunity for future employment at another school down the road. And again, because these are employees that are not acknowledged as employees by the entire structure that exists around them, you find little loopholes like this where, yeah, Dad, that 4-game redshirt thing worked fine for all the schools when it was about amateurism and when they controlled that and decided who redshirted and who didn't. But now that shoes on the other foot and the players all of a sudden have recognized, I've got a lot of mobility and I've got recourse if I'm in a situation that I don't like, it's now become something that can be used against teams, and we're seeing that here.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a guy who in Sluka, I don't think is going to be a pro prospect. He's a running quarterback. His completion percentage is under 50%. He has 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, but he's a running quarterback. He leads the team in rushing. So I think he's trying to get what he can get while he's playing college, because I do not think he is a pro prospect at quarterback. So he is leveraging to, and someone else will take him. So, someone else who will run the type of offense that he is used to quarterbacking will take him. I believe there's obviously enough colleges out there, but it's a chance on his part too, right? But again, we don't know the situation of how much he's making, how much he thought he was going to be making, to taking the chance that another school, like I said, another school would want him, but what are they willing to pay for him? Is he valuing himself in thinking I'll get more somewhere else, or at least I'll get a team to come to a price that I agree on and keep their promise? But it's definitely a chance, just like it's a chance in the portal all the time. Again, there were 43 quarterbacks in Power 4 that are starting that were portal guys. And that's just the way of the world that we're in right now. So you're betting on yourself that you're going to go obviously for the money and to try and help a team. But this seems to be purely according to Sluka, promises not kept. So money that he's not getting that he thinks he should get for a guy who this is going to be his chance to make money in college.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder, Dad. We talked about what NIL's benefits would be. And for so many people, I always emphasize these 4 or 5 years, these 5 years to do 4 seasons. And now even with the COVID year, we know more than that. For some guys, because they don't meet the height, weight, skill set thresholds that are necessary in the NFL, but fit well in certain college offense. UNLV is a great example of that. They run the GoJo offense, this version of sort of like a spread option attack that allows a quarterback like this, who's more of a runner than a passer, to be able to go and competently operate this attack. Some guys, this will be their primary earning window. And so on one hand, I never fault a guy for trying to maximize that, whether it was in the past by transferring to give himself the best opportunity or herself to go and play, to get on the field and do the thing that you came to college to do. And now that it's afforded to you, the option and opportunity to go make money. But like you said, Dad, and this is worth noting because this is always a part of it, whether it's been guys jumping in the portal a bunch, or in this case right now, if this was a guy going to ask for a raise, which again, I want to emphasize, we don't know. Was he not paid what he was owed? Did he come in and ask for a raise? But either way, you take a risk by being the first guy that we've seen really publicly do this in the middle of a season where a team is doing well, a sitting starting quarterback deciding to shut it down because he believes one way or another he's not compensated correctly. That's a tough place to be the first guy to plant your flag, and you are taking a major risk. Will another team look at your production and say, this guy's worth it? Will another team pay you what you believe you are owed? And will other teams look at you doing this and go, man, there's a chance that he might do this to me. Am I going to take that risk? All of those are factors when you decide to jump in and decide to play the game at this level. But we always knew someone was going to do this, and now we have a very small sample size of how this might go going forward that I'm fascinated to watch because, Dad, this is the kind of thing we always look for trends, right? College football players opting out of bowl games in the way that changed things. College football players jumping into the portal as much as they do. We know that some version of revenue sharing is on the way, but would more instances like this now push us closer to full-blown collective bargaining, actually getting an agreement in place so you would have contracts? So if you're the school, you've got to worry a lot less about this as a factor in your team building going forward.
Yeah, I mean, one of the next things we're going to see as we go to a 12 team and then maybe more of teams in a playoff is, will a lower seeded team have a player not want to play? that wants to get ready for the NFL and doesn't want to play in a playoff game because this is the first time we've gone past 4. We would never see it when there's just 4 teams left, but when there's 12 or 14, maybe there will be. But you're right. This young man is going out on a limb. Again, because he's not really a pro prospect, and he plays in a limited type of an offense. He's not going to go in a passing offense. So he is definitely taking a chance that somebody else will want him and pay him. But again, it's his choice. And portal guys have made the right choices and portal guys have made the wrong choices. But the bottom line is the rules now say you can make that choice. So he's making that choice. Everybody will have an opinion on whether it's a good choice or a bad choice, whether he's being selfish or not. But he's the one that has to make that decision. And he is the first really to plant the flag in this that will maybe make other players go, okay, I do have this leverage. To maybe kind of swing the leverage hammer. Will it get the NCAA and college football to come closer to an agreement? I don't know. There's too many entities that don't work together, and I still don't know who's going to head it up. I still think there's way too many questions for them to get to any kind of collective bargaining. If in fact they get there, I think they will get to revenue sharing. I think we'll get to revenue sharing, and I think we'll get to the collectives being back held by the schools and not the boosters. But I don't know when that's going to happen. I just think there's too many players, too many entities, too many presidents, too many conferences to get one system where everybody says, yeah, this is what's going to work now.
I never put limitations on desperate rich people, and college football and college athletics are full of them right now. Dad, from a team perspective, though, how would you feel about this if you're a teammate all of a sudden looking up in this situation where this is more part of the modern fabric of the sport, but you're the rest of that UNLV squad now, you're undefeated with a real chance to do something, and you see this situation playing out with your starting quarterback?
It's in the NFL, we always talk about a guy that holds out, withholds his services, that other teammates say, hey, that's about another man's money. So we're not messing with it. We'd love him to be here, but it's about his money. College players now have to get used to that. They have to get used to it. They're new to that train of thought of saying, wait a minute, in this case, we're undefeated. We're getting ready to start conference play and we're undefeated, and you're ditching us for money. Well, get used to it. And I don't know if it'll happen on the level it happens in the NFL, but college sports, especially football, has turned professional. It's been professional for a while, but it's really professional now. And players, now 18 to 22-year-olds playing in college, where a lot of them, this is all they're ever going to play. Remember, to maybe 2% make it to the NFL. Most of these guys, this is it. So they want to get as far as they can while they're playing and now make as much money as they're playing. So I think you'll get some, understandably so, that understand, and some that are like, man, is that a selfish move? This guy's the leader of our team. We're undefeated. We're on a good season, and he's ditching us. So I think you'll get both sides of the coin.
Yep, and those players know a lot more about the specifics of the situation than we do, so I think their reaction to this will be telling, because in general, I've always said this, whether it was a player that was transferring or had a disagreement with the team or what have you, if it was a guy that I truly loved and was one of the guys I wanted the best for, I always wanted to see them succeed. If that was with another team and the best situation with them wasn't with us, I was always going to support our people more than I was going to support anything else with our team, because those are the guys that you're going to work with and battling with each and every day. And that applies here as well. It's a new world. Everyone is funded differently. There are probably some guys in that UNLV team that aren't making money based on being in the group of 5 and the funding being different there, that are staring at this going, what the hell? But for everyone, like you said, Dad, it's putting on a very new pair of shoes and breaking them in right now. And there were always going to be growing pains with that. And this certainly turns into one of the most fascinating ones. We can get into this more with Jason Fitz coming up in a little bit as well. Noted UNLV fan, grew up out in Las Vegas, and a guy certainly dialed in to the college football scene who knows a lot about the way that this sport is changing. Because there's one other area, Dad, that I think this could be interesting to talk about, and that's leading up to the playoff. You want to talk about leverage and pain point. That's going to be one that some players have the chance to use later on. Coming up next, though, we'll talk to Viking star wideout Jalen Naylor about the start to their season. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Excited to welcome in Minnesota Vikings third-year wide receiver Jalen Naylor, coming off a big weekend where I'm sure you know and have probably heard this by now, Jalen, but for our fans that may not be aware, you and Justin Jefferson were a part of history this weekend. You guys have each caught a touchdown in all of the Vikings' first 3 games this season. You guys are the first duo in team history to have a touchdown catch in each of the first 3 games, and you know the history of this organization. There have been a lot of great receivers that have come through here, so what did it mean for you to be a part of something like that, man?
Really a blessing, man. You know, the receivers that came before us, they just paved the way for me and Justin. So, I mean, I'm just grateful to have this opportunity to be in this position.
Well, and the opportunity that you're getting now, talk about that. Talk about being the second man from Justin Jefferson and just your role now and how it's increased in the offense.
I mean, it's just a lot of hard work and dedication that's been going into it. You know, had a rough first couple years, and I've just been trying to stay true to myself and just do my best to be available, and that's what I've done this year, and it's been paying off so far.
Now it's interesting. You talk about a rough couple of years, but who would have thought your first NFL catch? Talk about that. It was on a fake punt, wasn't it?
Sir, in London, yep. Yeah, so
yeah.
I mean, it was something that we had schemed up. We know that the zeros or the cornerbacks on their punt return team always dive down inside. So we just had something for them to break out, and it worked.
Well, and so you're no stranger to your role kind of being changing and having to be ready for whatever comes to you on this team. You know, in your guys' receiver room, obviously Jordan Addison's been dealing with injury, TJ in the tight end room as well. So have you felt your role have to kind of change even early in this season in the offense relative to what you were coming into this season thinking?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I always prepare myself to always be ready to go out there and just step up and make plays. And I'm just blessed to be in this position that a couple guys are down, and I'm just able to step in and just help the team.
There was analysts talk that you guys are one of the surprise 3-0 teams. I would imagine it's not a surprise to you guys, though, is it?
Not at all. Not at all. We know the type of guys we have in this locker room. We know the type of coach we have, and it's all come to fruition.
You mentioned the type of coach. He's also your play caller. What does Kevin O'Connell do so well that puts you guys in position to succeed offensively? Let's start with that.
It's just the schemes, man. Just having those attacking schemes that he preaches in our team room, and the play calls. We just making it come to life. We just trust him that he'll get us in the right calls, and we just go out there and execute.
You're in college at Michigan State. You average almost 17 yards a catch. This year, you're averaging almost 17 yards a catch. Is that kind of been your kind of the way you are a receiver? They're catching the deep ball, the long ball.
Yes, sir. You know, just anytime I get the chance to have the ball in my hands, I always want to have something positive go with it. It's been showing so far.
What's it like playing receiver opposite a guy with the gravity that Justin has when he's out there on the field?
It's amazing, man, knowing that he's going to have double teams or a safety always over top of him. It just gives me more opportunities to have those one-on-one battles and go showcase myself and go win.
When you see him and you come in, and obviously he's been a guy that's been one of the best receivers in this league for a while now, if not the consensus best right now. What do you think is like the one or two things that he absolutely does better than any receiver you've ever seen?
The way he catches the ball, first off, I mean, he makes unbelievable catches all the time, practice and games. He does it all, man. You know, he ain't scared to go down and get a block on the safety. You know, he's a complete receiver, and I just look up to him and just try to take some of the things that he plays and put into my game.
You know, before J.J. McCarthy got hurt, how much of a question was there as who would be the actual starter on day one?
I mean, for me, I didn't know who would be the one, but I mean, they were both producing at a high level throughout training camp and out throughout the offseason. So, I mean, it didn't. I feel like it didn't matter who was going to be out there. I just knew that they was going to go out there and make plays.
So I want to ask you about Sam and the season he's had, because when we talk about surprises, Sam's an interesting case. He's been a veteran around this league and been in a couple of different stops now since he was a former top overall pick. But we have to do some investigative journalism here. Do you think Sam Darnold's hair is red?
I believe so.
All right, there we go. You know what? We needed some inside reporting. There had been a hotly contested debate about whether or not Sam Darnold's success could be given to the redheaded community or not. I think so. I think he should be proud of that. And I'm glad that someone who has boots on the ground that sees him every day also sees him for the wonderful redheaded gunslinger that he is right now. So listen, I'm sure you saw Sam when you were in college as a guy who was already in the NFL at that point. You know something about his journey here based off what you knew about Sam and then what you saw when Sam was your quarterback, when you finally were in the same building as him. How different was the expectation versus the reality for you?
I mean, I feel like the expectation was always the same. Before he was even in the league at USC, I watched USC a lot, and he was a great quarterback there, and I knew what type of quarterback he was, like when he got here. So it was just a matter of just trust and belief in him, and just growing his confidence. And he's been phenomenal so far. And I'm hats off to Sam, man. He's doing a wonderful job. He's going to keep it rolling.
So again, 3-0, 2 of the games pretty much blowouts, but now this week is your first division game. Is there any more on division games in preparation than non-division games?
I feel like each game it's a tough league, so each game we got to take it in as we got to win this game, no matter whoever the opponent is. It's always going to be a fight. And, we always prepare the same, just try to go out and execute our game plan.
I feel like the other big story for you guys so far through 3 weeks has been Brian Flores' defense. I mean, we have seen some of the better quarterbacks in this league with their head in their hands on the sideline trying to figure out what went wrong. As someone that sees this group all through the offseason and through camp, how would you describe Brian Flores' defensive unit?
Unpredictable. For sure, unpredictable, because they can line 8 guys up on the line and drop 8 in the cover. So it's like you don't know what you're getting on the snap until the ball is actually in the quarterback's hands. So, I mean, for me, it's just a wonderful defense, and glad to be a part of this defense, man. Happy to have gone against them throughout the offseason, and now makes it easier for us as an offense to go out there and execute the simple coverages that we're seeing.
So now in camp, when you guys did one versus one, good on good, how'd you guys fare against that defense?
I feel like we won more of the battles. I give the offense the upper hand on that.
You mentioned, though, does it feel easier going up against other defensive schemes? I mean, is there another defense like your guys in the NFL from what you guys have seen so far that you're going to go against?
No defense like our defense, man. Each week it's been pretty simple for us as an offense to dictate what the defense is showing us and then what they're going to run. So I feel like it's been pretty easy so far.
It showed with you guys, and it's been exciting as hell to watch with this team. Jalen, congrats on all the success, man. Thank you for giving us some time. Best of luck going forward. I think everyone now very excited to see what this Minnesota Vikings team can accomplish.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great season.
Well, there we go. Definitive answer. I'm sorry, Jesse. Sam Darnold has red hair. We can finally put this long, ugly saga to bed here on this show after witness testimony from one of his teammates and close personal friends.
Yeah, well, I didn't get a chance to cross-examine the witness, so I do not accept this as a definitive ruling.
That's fine.
Well
the
played,
jury
Jesse.
Seems out on this one. But, Dad, no questions from the court about this Vikings team managing to have success with Kirk Cousins in a division that – Sam Darnold, while technically not the backup for this team, right? He worked as the one all offseason until a late surge in camp by J.J. McCarthy that maybe clouded what people thought might be the plan there until ultimately the injury made that decision final, unfortunately, and cut off the beginning of J.J. McCarthy's rookie season. But, Dad, you look around now and see in the rest of that division what Malik Willis has done as a backup quarterback so far, and in a couple other areas in the NFL what we've seen backups pressed into, this sort of highlights the need to have a fully fleshed out plan beyond just your starter or your planned future starter if you're any organization that we've probably seen as prudent for quite some time.
I remember going back to the Peyton Manning days when Bill Polian was the GM of the Colts, and they had various backups. And basically, every now and then it was questioned, like about a lack of a competent backup. And Bill's line was, if Peyton gets hurt, our season's over. So it was just admitted, our season's done if Peyton gets hurt. And it was probably true. But you saw a guy a couple of years ago like Cooper Rush for the Cowboys. He started 5 games when Dak hurt his thumb in the first game against Tampa Bay. And Cooper Rush went 4-1. Remember, those teams for a couple of years in a row went 13-3 before it went to the 17-game schedule. And they were, or 12 or 13, one of the two. But either way, and in part that was Cooper Rush. That was a backup quarterback going 4-1 in 5 starts. You have Malik Willis now at 2-0. And we're not sure what's going to go on this week. Jordan Love, the thought, I didn't think he was going to play last week. He was out there warming up. Now, will he play this week in the Minnesota-Green Bay matchup, or will Malik Willis get a chance to go 3-0 as a backup? So backup is, as I said, a backup's job, as long as it's not for the entire season, if it's for X amount of games, is to keep your team treading water. And obviously Cooper Rush did more than keep treading water. And right now Malik Willis is doing more than treading water at 2-0. Where you look in Miami, they're already talking about, Skylar Thompson came in and started for Tua. And they're already talking about, they picked up Tyler Huntley. And will it be him? Will it be Tim Boyle? So they're going, it looks like they're moving on to another backup starter and have a couple of so they're kind of feeling it out on what's going to work. Where it's worked for Dallas, it's worked for Green Bay, it's currently working for Green Bay.
Yeah, well, and I think there's key differences in this conversation when we talk about what you mentioned with Bill Polian long ago and what some of these teams are dealing with now that make Miami's situation a lot more complicated is having a competent backup. We've seen teams for years going back to when the Eagles started shelling out serious cash for backup quarterback or spending draft capital on a backup quarterback on the higher end of the draft is there's value in that position, but it really especially applies if you've got a quarterback that's just missing a limited amount of time. Like for Miami, this is sort of a weird situation where, Tua's on IR, but it's with a brain injury. We're talking about a concussion, and so there's no guarantees that they could get him back, and it changes the math on that Miami season to where in these other instances, Dad, for Malik Willis, who's right now the poster for this, it's really a test for your entire organization's health. Where for your play caller on offense, can you absorb this and coach your way through this situation? We're seeing it, with Kyle Shanahan doing it with backup players at the skill position spots on his team right now, but with quarterback especially, that to me is sort of a test of your, and I know this word gets overused, but it's a test of team culture. Can you come in and have a plan for those few games? Because every backup quarterback kind of has a number, right? And the value of a backup quarterback is how many of those games can he go out and hold up through before the rest of the NFL defenses catch up and take away those things that he can do well? And the ones that have a better answer to that, guys like Gardner Minshew, who have a chance to be starters on the higher end of that, guys like Joe Flacco backing up in Indianapolis right now, those are the ones that get paid and are sought after every offseason.
And you get Andy Dalton that comes in and plays great. And again, I don't think Carolina is gonna challenge for the division, but that lifted the spirits certainly of that team. As a veteran, you mentioned Joe Flacco coming in as a aged veteran who's a backup now with the Colts. And again, and with Tua, you're right. It's we're not sure of the number, and we think the number is ending for Green Bay. That Jordan Love may be back this week, if not probably next week. They didn't put him on IR for a reason. But in Miami, it is a little different, not knowing when Tua is coming back and trying to figure out just who's going to try and keep their head above water until he gets back.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, when all of a sudden your backup is now dealing with a painful rib injury and might be down, the situation gets dire pretty quickly, as most people not built to go through multiple quarterbacks in a football season, even if they're as competent as Mike McDaniel seems to be. Coming up next, we'll get our buddy Jason Fitz in here to take a look at his beloved Raiders and the rest of the NFL and college football here on GoJo and Golic.
It's almost October, you guys, which means Halloween playoff baseball. So let's take a look at the standings and where everything stands right now. Padres clinch a wild card spot on a triple play. NL has 2 spots left. Braves, Mets, and Diamondbacks battling it out. Braves and Mets play tonight, tomorrow before wrapping up their seasons. Another NL wildcard race that's going to come down to the wire. For us on this show, though, we're just halfway home. Jason Fitz going to join us next. It's strictly business for the Raiders fans. Stay tuned for him, some basketball, and what one media member thinks of Taylor Swift's impact on Travis Kelce. Just what we need.
Our Joe and Golic, Michael Golic Senior, Cofield here, looking to talk to our buddy Jason Fitz, host and analyst over at Yahoo Sports, about what's going on with his UNLV Rebels right now, his Las Vegas Raiders making business decisions. There's a lot going on in the general orbit. Fitz, what McShay, who had some interesting comments, went to the Spice Rack talking about the slow start for Travis Kelce this season. We'll see if those have any merit, but in the meantime, it appears that Jason Fitz and his wisp of Hershey Kiss-like hair have now made their way into the chat. You guys can check him out over at Yahoo Sports, as well as on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday mornings. Fitzy, how we doing, bud?
My hair's doing better than your hair's ever done, so let's just start there. But I'm good, boys. Despite
like
massive chaos.
Top down on your head.
I'm thinking about shaving it off. I'm having I wonder, should I shave it off? But is that insulting to people that can't grow it? I don't know. Like I genuinely thought last week I almost took it and just took it all off. But the advice I got was to wait till after the Super Bowl so that if I hate it, I'm not on camera for the next several months for Yahoo Sports with all of our shows with hair that I hate. So I don't know.
That's true. If you're not sure of how it's going to look and you have to be on camera, you may want to hold off. And speaking of hair, let's start off with this quick question because it's been going on for a couple of days. With the Red Rifle Andy Dalton getting the win for Carolina and Sam Darnold, the redhead at 3-0 Minnesota. Is Sam Darnold, does he have red hair?
I don't know. It's like blondish, right? It's like strawberry blonde. It's not red.
Thank you so much, Fitz, for having eyes.
I mean, what are we trying to just anoint everybody that's sort of reddish? Like I get red highlights on the side when it comes in that are now turning gray because I'm old. That's part of why I keep it shaved down on the side. So I don't know. Like, does that make me a redhead because I get the occasional red highlight in there? No. Like you gotta have red hair to have red hair.
Thank you.
Jesse, I just want you to look and see who you're aligning yourself with on this appearance and ask you if you feel good about this.
Listen, GoJo, I think at this point your dad even turned on you, so let's just be real here. It's 3 people with hair versus the guy without hair. So I think we kind of win here, all right?
I'm pretty sure that Golic Senior has more
Jesse,
hair on his rear end than Junior's had on his head.
The fact that you guys have to resort to these attacks just lets me know how insecure you guys are on your side of the argument here. So actually, this just makes me feel more emboldened to stand my ground because clearly you guys are threatened by the truth. There's a part of you that fears it. And I don't know what those reasons are. You have to explore those insecurities for yourself. Next time on Dragon Ball Z, we'll get back to that. This episode, however, we've got to ask Jason Fitz about this. And there's a lot we want to get to, Fitzy. Obviously, this last weekend in the NFL brought us a lot of really interesting results. But for people that don't know, you grew up in Las Vegas. You're obviously a huge Raiders fan. Everyone knows that. But also, I know a big UNLV football fan. And for Barry Odom's bunch, who are 3-0 and firmly in the mix for a lot of goals this season, the news that we got this morning about Matthew Sluka, their starting quarterback, opting to use his red shirt and preserve his eligibility going forward with the intent to transfer because according to him, he had certain commitments that had not been fulfilled and some other vagaries about the situation out there. Jason, how big is this not only for UNLV, but for college football overall to see a player make this kind of stand?
Look, it's huge for UNLV because they're going up against Fresno State this weekend in a big matchup. And don't get it twisted, because of the way the college football playoff now works, the highest ranked group of 5 goes in with an automatic bid. UNLV has a very real chance at being the highest ranked group of 5 by the time this thing's over. So you're talking about a game of actual consequence for a team that does have a shot at the college football playoff, which is wild to say, but that's real. The other part of this, to your point, Mike, is this is the precedent. I think all the people that have been yelling and screaming about athletes getting paid in name, image, likeness are going to use this to plant their flag as they see this is what happens. We don't know the details here, but it is disturbing, I think, to see somebody say, hey, promises weren't kept. I'm going to back out. This is one of those things that the player has the right to do. And, now every recruit that's looking at UNLV is going to have to dig into this, figure out what's going on. And then every kid that is on the borderline of empowered, are we really going to see a generation of athletes that decide they're not going to wait till the end of the year to transfer? They're simply going to decide early on that they need to preserve eligibility. It is scary precedent, but this is sort of the clapback. This is athlete empowerment to its finest. So this also reminds us, guys, and we talk about this all the time now, college football, especially for Group of Five, a lot of their recruiting time isn't about going out and getting other players. It's recruiting their best players to want to stay where they are. You got to make guys feel loved or you are going to lose guys. That's the new reality of college football.
Is there an answer for this from the NCAA or the college presidents or all the entities trying to get one cohesive maybe rule or way college football is going to do business to speed up the process? I certainly don't think so, but I'm wondering what you think. No,
because, and look, nobody cares about legalese, but I think we can all agree on this. Because the NFL has collective bargaining and they have a union and they have all of these things, college football doesn't have that. So the minute the NCAA tries to step in and restrict anybody's right to move and do what they want, they're simply going to be challenged in court. And what have we seen every time? Every time they get challenged in court for trying to limit a player in any way, shape, or form, they lose, right? So even if they think they can win here, somebody will sue them and they will lose. So I think this is all proof that the NCAA, by not being ahead of things 10 years ago, have put them in a situation where now they have absolutely no power to stop things now. Should there be a system in place? I wish there was. I wish there was a way that we could do this. But in order to do that, you really would have to consider unionizing all players, collectively bargaining a deal between all schools and all players. Like this sounds like a legalese nightmare that would take 20 years.
It certainly does. And I think because college sports has gone down one path for so long in pseudo-amateurism and tried to continue to pile up all this big business on top of it, it's now created an untenable ball of yarn that's going to take a really, really concerted effort to untangle. The interesting part about this is, as you mentioned, Fitz, this is largely unregulated. We don't know a lot of the specifics about this situation. Like, this was put out by the player himself in this day and age where, hey, maybe is this something? I mean, it's Wednesday. Could this get worked out by Friday? Could this be like we see all the time where you have a player holding in to try and leverage this to get more money from his current situation? And could it happen? Because Fitz, then I think about spinning this forward where he's doing this at the week 4 mark because you know you can only play 4 games while preserving your red shirt and being able to have that other year of eligibility. But we see players transfer after long seasons all the time. What's to stop a fringe player that's got a team that's in contention for the college football playoff of saying, hey, you're going to pay me more money or I'm not going to show up for this very important playoff game that we've got coming up, and then maybe I'll find a new suitor in the offseason. So that is one of the ripple effects that I do think this situation where some people at bigger schools might say, well, this is UNLV, these are Group of 5 problems, I don't have to worry about this, might need to take notice.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the first thing, Mike, when I saw on the news this morning, I thought, what a time to leverage. You know, look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know if he is leveraging, but what a time to leverage. You're going into this Fresno State game. You have a program that's on the others receiving votes column right now, the outside looking in just on the fringe of the top 25. This is a key moment. You're like, promises weren't kept. Like, that is a heck of a leverage play. Does it make me uncomfortable to think that that's where college football could go? Yeah, I think it's fair. And this is one of the nuances of this whole conversation. Like, I want player empowerment. Does this make me uncomfortable? If it's a leverage play, hell yes, it does.
Certainly a interesting thought by Mike that can this get worked out this week? Hammer out a new contract before your first conference game against Fresno State. That would be really interesting. Let's turn to the pros. Your Raiders are 1-2. You lose to the Panthers, who get their first win with Andy Dalton running the show. Gardner Minshew is going to stay the starting quarterback. You have really 2 winnable games, Browns and Broncos next. Could go either way, but certainly not the upper echelon of the NFL. Your thoughts on Minshew staying as the starter?
A couple of things need to change. Look, we talked about it before. The offensive line needs to be better. But Gardner Minshew right now is shrinking. And what I mean by that is when he steps up in the pocket, his body is he's anticipating hits before he gets hit. Is that a problem? Yes, that's absolutely a problem. Is Gardner Minshew the problem with the Las Vegas Raiders? No. Like this game, this loss to the Carolina Panthers, let's be clear. This loss lies squarely at the feet, of Antonio Pierce, who, when you are a culture coach and you have a team that comes out and plays flat against a lesser opponent, man, that's not supposed to be Antonio Pierce's MO, right? Like, he's supposed to be a guy that gets a team fired up. That entire defensive side of the ball was absolutely flat. Bad angles. They couldn't stop the run. They just got gouged, right? So I think we have to squarely look at this and say this was a team effort, team loss. Also, Max Crosby, high ankle sprain, he was a shell of himself. And without his energy, the defense couldn't match anything. So there are a million problems, I think, right now. The offensive line's bad. The defense didn't show up. Antonio Pierce didn't get the guys fired up. Gardner Minshew is a problem, but I honestly think, guys, if you put, I don't care which quarterback you put there, short of Mahomes, you put any decent quarterback behind that offensive line, they're still going to lose that game. They came out flat and the offensive line didn't play well enough. So fixing the quarterback position is a small piece, but really the disappointment here, I cannot say loudly enough. I did not think my beloved Raiders, who I have watched blow, I think the number is 4 times now in the last 3 years, they have lost to a losing team that replaced their quarterback the week of the Raiders game. All right, that's a systemic problem, right? When every single time it happens, Antonio Pierce is supposed to be the type of coach that doesn't have a team come out like they don't give a damn, and they did. So I'm looking at Antonio Pierce and saying, hey, if the sales pitch was, I'm not an X's and O's guys like you think, but I'm going to make sure we all give our all, man, Antonio Pierce, you got to look in the mirror too and figure out what didn't happen all week that your team came out that flat.
A struggle for the Raiders to try and bounce back after this week. Fitz, let's go to the top side of the picture, though. We come into the NFL season with all of our prognostication and preconceived notion, and now we've got a sample size. It's a small one, but we've got 3 weeks of football. In your mind, who is the best team in the NFL now through these first 3 weeks?
Well, I think the Buffalo Bills are, but I'm also not betting against the Kansas City Chiefs. Does that make sense? Like, I'm done betting against Patrick Mahomes with a second left on the clock. But the way the Bills have played, and I know I keep telling you guys this, I'll keep echoing this for everybody. You know, working with Damian Harris at the draft, the Bills thought that Josh Allen was going to account for 40 touchdowns this year, no matter who was with him. Didn't matter if he had nobody, didn't matter if he had anybody. He's a 40 touchdown guy. What's he look like so far? 40 touchdown guy. Like Josh Allen looks like an MVP candidate, and they're spreading the ball around so much right now. It's beautiful to watch. Like the way the Bills are playing right now, with the efficiency that they play with, their ability to work the ball in. I don't know how you stop this version of Buffalo. The only answer is that Kansas City will know, because they always know. So am I betting against the Chiefs? No, but the best team right now in the league is the Bills.
They take on Baltimore at Baltimore. Unfortunately, that's a game I'm calling this week. So that's Baltimore, you know, though they didn't start the season well, I feel is right. I don't know if in Buffalo's level, but right there, and certainly can run the ball with the best of them.
Yeah, well, and like I said before, if Todd Monken had run against the Raiders, they would have won that game. He didn't. They went out, and I mean, just to watch 45 runs out of 60 plays, like that level of I'm just going to do what I do, and I'm going to do it better than you do. I mean, it is rare that in an actual NFL game, it feels like you were watching two people play Madden, and it felt like there was just this process of I'm going to run the same play over and over, and we're going to do the same thing. Whole stadium knew what they were going to do. We knew what they were going to do, and the Cowboys could do nothing about it. Like I keep hearing everybody yell, well, you got to fix it. If you couldn't do anything about that, I don't know how you fix that. You're not suddenly changing your personnel. You're not suddenly changing your scheme. You can tweak things, but at this point, y'all are who you are. The Cowboys got gouged because the Ravens figured out, hey, we got this guy back here that can run the ball a lot. We got this line that maybe isn't playing the best against pass rush. Let's do what we do best. Man, I thought that was a statement win for Baltimore and a statement loss for the Cowboys.
Let's finish up with a big statement here, Jayson. We got about a minute and a half left. Jacksonville gets another tough loss this weekend. How big a part of the problem is their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, that they just re-signed to big money this offseason?
Why are we not allowed to be hard on Trevor Lawrence? And Mike, you and I stood on the field and watched Trevor Lawrence in his freshman year at Clemson. And I remember at the time, people were saying he should challenge legally the rules that prevent him from going to the NFL, because he could be John Elway good if he was drafted today. Like, that was a real conversation. I think the problem is we became so obsessed with that we won't let that go now. Now, I will agree that the Jags didn't do anything to help Trevor Lawrence at the beginning of his career. But Doug Peterson is supposed to be the type of coach that can. And I don't watch Trevor Lawrence at all anymore and think I am scared of this quarterback. And that to me is a statement. Like he's fine, but they didn't pay him to be fine. I think right now that contract looks questionable. Trevor Lawrence looks questionable. I have no faith in the Jags.
A tough offseason or start to the season for some quarterbacks with very recent paydays, no doubt. At Jason Fitz on Twitter is where you can find him. Yahoo Sports is where you can see and hear him. You can also listen on Fox Sports Radio. Fitzy, appreciate the time this morning. We're excited to see your haircut next week.
You know, you could shave all of that and then glue it to the top and just see what you look like for a day.
Wow.
I'll come and unwrap that little Hershey's Kiss on top of your head after the show and see what kind of chocolate you're hiding inside there. You magical little elf. Coming. Down bad, crying at the gym. Travis Kelce's slow start to the season attacked by one NFL analyst. Next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We love everything Tavis on this show, okay? So if you think we're not going to cover everything and anything Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift related, you don't know us. So we all know Travis Kelce's had a relatively slow, quiet start to his season. It has some people wagging their tongues, including Todd McShay. He has some thoughts on why.
Are we not allowed to say that he's out of shape, that he's been partying all off season? He's been jet setting around with the most famous person probably in the entire world. The coverage and the respect he gets is the same. The athlete is not. Now, is he going to work himself into shape during the season? Yeah, I'm sure he will. He's an unbelievable competitor. He's one of the best to ever do it, but he's not the same guy right now. I'm not blaming it on Taylor Swift. I'm not blaming anything. All I'm saying is when you win 2 Super Bowls, you've got the whole tour that happens after the Super Bowl. There's no one else doing more commercials, I don't think, in the league. I mean, he and Mahomes are up there, but I think Kelce's doing more commercials and things. He's been at more events, doing more things socially. It's impossible to carry that schedule and still put in the same amount of time for football.
Guys, he should be down bad crying at the gym, but apparently he's not. And I gotta say, I do kind of agree with this. Take out the Taylor Swift part. I feel like we don't need to bring Taylor Swift into this. But he has been just like on the social scene, like in New York, doing all this stuff. And it's kind of a bad look to be in head-to-toe Gucci at the US Open, horrible outfit, but kind of hard to be out there like dancing, singing, having a drink, and then looking bad on the football field.
There's a few things that go into this. First and foremost, shout out to Todd McShay. This was on the Russillo show, I believe. And for making sure to put the caveat in there, I'm not blaming Taylor Swift, because halfway through that, I was going to start to worry about my buddy Todd and what was going to go on with this. So, Dad, first and foremost that, but I saw you raring to go there. So how do you take that, Dad, this idea that Travis Kelce cannot balance what looked like a robust social schedule with getting ready to be one of the better tight ends in the NFL?
So, I mean, there are certainly, you look at stats, he is a year older as well, but I'm not going to, why shouldn't he be at the U.S. Open? Pat Mahomes was at the U.S. Open as well. I mean, I got tired of this talk like during the season when players do things on their off day that they should be watching film 24/7. You're in the off season, and he's a pro, and he knows how to prepare. Now, I'll get to the preparation, but to think you can't go to events, I think, is ridiculous. And I'm sorry, Jesse, to correlate him going to the U.S. Open to not. Now, I know it's in the grand scheme of things, because he did fly a lot to Taylor's concerts. He's certainly been shooting commercials. So after a Super Bowl, what's one of the first things Bill Belichick always said after they won a Super Bowl is, I'm behind. We're behind. We're the last of two teams to play. We're behind on getting ready for next season. And for players, that's true as well, because you need your body to rest for a while before you start to train again. And when you play in the last game of the season, it is February. Most teams have been off, for weeks to a month. And they have had that rest time. You need the rest time before you start to prepare again. And if that is interrupted, I should say, with travel, with commercials. Listen, the stats bear out something, right? In 22, his first 3 games, he started with 24 targets, 17 receptions. In 23, he was hurt the first game, but then the 3 games after that, he started with 26 targets and 17 receptions. This year, the first 3 games, he started with 12 targets and 8 receptions. Rashee Rice is by far and away the go-to guy at 29 targets and 24 receptions. Travis is second, though albeit by a small margin to Xavier Worthy, but he is second. He was used, I just called that game against Atlanta on Sunday. He is used as a decoy a little more. When he runs the seam, he takes linebackers with him. And man, those crossing routes to Rashee Rice are nice and open underneath. So is there something to what Todd McShay says? Probably. The guy is enjoying the fruits of his labor. He is enjoying it. Is it costing him workout? Listen, I don't know. I'm not following him around. I'm not at his workouts. He knows he's 35, 36 years old, isn't he? I mean, he knows
34
how he has
to turn
to
35 in October.
Turn 35 in October. He knows how he has to prepare. Did he not as much because of the schedule that he had? Possibly. But one thing I think he will do is work himself into the offense more, which admittedly to Pat Mahomes isn't playing all that great either. I mean, he missed some throws in that Atlanta game, underthrew an interception, missed receivers. This offense last year and this year is not clicking the way we normally see a Kansas City offense. So this isn't all on Travis for sure, but there probably is some merit, Jesse, to him traveling as much as he did and enjoying the fruits of his labor as much as he did. And I don't blame him. Him and his brother Jayson doing the commercials. I don't blame them guys for doing that.
But I'm saying we're saying this for a lot of reasons. There's a lot to respond to here. There was a lot going on in that. So I want to try and piece this out here. And first and foremost, to Jesse's point about being at the U.S. Open, we know Travis Kelce's schedule. You know what we don't know? Every other NFL player's off-season movings. So yes, I don't discount that Todd McShay might know something. He's well connected around the league. Maybe this is stuff that he's actually heard from people close to the situation, and he knows enough to feel comfortable saying this. I won't discount that at all, or that there's some validity to this, but we also know because Travis Kelce is with the most famous woman on the planet. So we see this. What most people don't know is what the baseline is for the social activities of other NFL players in the offseason as something to weigh this against. So I think a lot of it's easy to say, oh, he's not working hard enough compared. You didn't know how hard he was working to begin with. Most people that might make the judgment here. I'm not saying that with Todd. So I'm saying there could be some merit to that, Jesse.
So my thing is this. It's not like that was in like July. That was in September, wasn't it? Like I'm just saying it's not like that was like the height of the offseason. I think that was in September. The other part of that is I agree with you. Like, I'm not saying we know anything about his workout schedule, et cetera. I'm just saying if you are a person looking at this, it's just not a good look. If he's at the US Open having a few dancing around and then going and balling out on the field, totally fine. And I'm not saying he's not working hard. I'm just saying perception is a big thing, and public perception is seeing somebody like living it up and then not performing the way you think they should be performing. It's just not a great look.
Well, no, and I guess there's part of that where it's like, I understand you're right. Perception is going to be out for reality for some people. I don't really care about that. That doesn't matter to me what people think the perception is from the outside, and it won't matter to this Chiefs team. I do think perception is important, though, Dad, to the other part of this you were talking about, this perceived slow start by the Chiefs. This is a perception and reality problem because we all got ourselves lost in the sauce this offseason talking about, well, they added Hollywood Brown and they added Xavier Worthy and they're going to be this fast, high-flying offense again because Patrick Mahomes is mad. I'm guilty of this as well. And all that happened is the 2023 Chiefs showed up. Teams that win games by a closer margin, teams that's still led by defense, like we saw in this last game. It's still a team that's capable of being the best team in the NFL because these guys make timely plays when it counts. It's just that we all talked ourselves into believing that, because they got a few guys that run sub 440s on the roster, now all of a sudden it's going to look like 2020 again, where that's just not the case at this point, and realistically was probably always going to take longer than we gave it credit for.
And it was probably more this type of offense, or maybe a little better than this, but this type of offense that would turn out to be the norm, which it's been last year and it's been so far this year, that they couldn't keep up the pace that they had. I mean, Mahomes himself, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the year. Again, he has been off. So I think we also have to understand that the other teams don't sit still either when you're preparing to play the Super Bowl champs and the perceived best team in the league. You are going to try and defense them a little bit better. And quite honestly, their defense is not playing up to what they were at the level they were at last year. But I know it concentrates on the offense because Pat, even though they won the Super Bowl, was mad that the offense wasn't as high flying, and maybe it won't be anymore. But the bottom line is they're still winning. They're still finding ways to win. And I think over the course of the season, Travis will become that threat again. Rashee Rice is stepping out and playing some great ball right now. But to your point, Jesse, perception, yeah. Listen, and I'm with Mike. I don't care about that from the inner workings of football, but to the public, there is the perception that it's not just the U.S. Open, that he is doing, they see him on every commercial. They see him flying to Taylor's concerts, and they just, the natural perception is, well, I wonder how much work is going on, when we don't know. We truly don't know. And to Mike's point, you don't know what other athletes are doing. They're just not as high profile as Travis Kelce is. So you don't see what they're doing, where they're going, or things that they're doing. So he just happens to be in front of the camera at 90% of the time, so everybody knows what he's doing.
Does Taylor have a gym on her PJ? Do we know?
Probably.
Yeah.
I guess that's the other part of this too. If we really want to fine tooth comb all that stuff, Travis Kelce, to get where he is already worked harder in some instances, clearly, and some of it's talent, circumstance, all that stuff. Yeah. But he's been willing to do things that others hadn't to get to a place where most people don't go. And so who's to say he's still not able to do that? The other part of this that I also think is funny in this conversation is it's also obscuring that, to Dad's point, he's a 34-year-old player that has played in the last game of the season 3 of the last 4 years. We talked about this with LeBron James and in the NBA. At some point, that does add up just in general. And it's not like he plays quarterback. It's not like he's a punter. I get that Travis Kelce's not the most devastating blocker out there, but turn on the tape from this last weekend against the Falcons. The Chiefs already over the last few years have battened down the hatches and run more 2 and 3 tight end sets than they did during the first iteration of the Mahomes, Kelce, Reed version of this dynasty. And it asks Travis to go down there and mix it up. Again, no one's going to confuse him for George Kittle, but he's sticking his nose in there. He's a capable blocker who understands the scheme. And you watch, there's plenty of plays that run right behind him. There's plenty of routes that run right off of him. This is still a guy that's been tremendously important. And I guess what this all boils down to, Dad, is What's it matter to anyone outside of fantasy football owners or gamblers if this gets off to a slow start, if the Chiefs are still winning football games? And Todd even said it there himself, like, this isn't an attack on Todd McShay. He's just the comments that launched this. But he said he'll probably play himself into shape. And again, what have we always said for this Chiefs offense? It doesn't really matter what it looks like now because we've seen proof that by the end of the season, it can and has looked very different. And if, oh, by the way, they're still undefeated in the meantime, then again, this is just fantasy football owners disappointed they took Travis Kelce in an early round and he's producing like tight end 17 right now, which, by the way, he's got company as Sam Laporta hasn't been off to the greatest start this season. Mark Andrews hasn't been off to the greatest start to this season relative to expectation. George Kittle injured now as well and dealing with some of that same stuff. It's been a league-wide depression of some tight end stats for some of the higher end guys earlier on in the season that Travis fits into.
And we know we're in the social media era where, especially as public as Travis is with the most popular person on the planet right now in Taylor Swift, that everybody's going to form an opinion, right? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what their opinion is, but the opinion is going to be out there, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok or whatever. You know, it's going to follow him because he's involved with Taylor Swift. I mean, that's just the reality. And you know what? He knows it more than anybody. He knows what follows along those lines more than anybody. Yet the dude's a walk-in Hall of Famer. That doesn't mean he's resting on his laurels, but it's also okay to enjoy life a little bit as well. This is something new for him that he's enjoying, and I do think it'll all work out. I don't think the offense will be as prolific as it was years ago, but bottom line is they're still winning and they're still the team to beat.
Yeah, I do think, again, it's okay to admit the dude's got a lot more on his plate than he used to 2-3 years ago between the success of the podcast and the burgeoning media career. I saw he's in a new TV show that's coming out on FX. Right. Obviously, you've got the relationship that's got the travel requirements that has so far. So all those things mixed together, yeah, it would be totally normal. But again, I ask in the grand scheme of things, as this team sits here undefeated and still with the ability to do exactly what we've seen them do in the past, hey, man, what are we all that worried about if it looks a little bit different right now? Rashee Rice, enjoy the ride, brother, because you seem to have become one of the favorite targets of Patrick Mahomes in a way that can be very financially lucrative for everyone involved there. That are the Chiefs, relative rich person problems here. Coming up next, let's get you set for some of the problems that'll come up this upcoming NBA season for the defending champions, and take a look at the WNBA postseason getting going in the last couple of days. Next on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Half of the WNBA Final Four is set, and it is a good one. It will be a rematch of last year's finals. We're going to see the Liberty and Aces face each other once again as both teams advance after last night. Liberty, minus 145 favorites in the series, but both teams are favored to win the title over whoever wins the other two series tonight. So, guys, this is going to be an awesome one to watch as we move into the postseason with the WNBA.
It is no doubt, man, Dad, if you are the New York Liberty, you're rolling in there feeling pretty damn good about yourself. Sabrina Ionescu in the fourth quarter of that game last night was an absolute woman on fire. And did you see her go and dap up Spike Lee on the sideline? Know the New York basketball fan down there went over and gave the handshake and said after the game, hey, man, listen, once that happened, I was filled with New York basketball power and knew that we probably weren't going to have a chance to lose. So, Dad, how do you see this one? You've got the Aces, the two-time defending champions with the multiple-time MVP and A'ja Wilson on one side, and the New York Liberty team that's been the best team in the W all season long. Who do you think wins this?
I think New York does. New York beat them 3 times this year in the regular season. We know the Aces to start, the season up to the Olympic break didn't have Chelsea Gray with the foot injury, but they have not been the dominant team since Chelsea came back and since after the Olympics. So I like the Liberty. I think they're just stacked, as you mentioned. Ionescu had 36 in the win with a monster fourth quarter. The Aces, listen. They can still play. Obviously, 3-time player of the year in A'ja Wilson, but Kelsey Plum led the way with 29 points in their win last night over the Atlanta Dream. I like the Liberty. I think they're deeper than the Aces are, so I like them in the series.
I would agree. I think I'm inclined there. Cool one. We've talked a lot, obviously, about A'ja Wilson, who had maybe the greatest season in the history of the WNBA this year, en route to shattering records left and right, becoming the first single-season 1,000-point scorer in WNBA history. Going up against last year's MVP, though, remember, Brianna Stewart was the one that won the WNBA MVP in 2023. So getting the matchup of those two incredibly talented big players for each of these teams amidst, like you said, Chelsea Gray and her importance to that team being such a part of the late season resurgence for this Las Vegas Aces team. It's going to be box office. It's just a shame that we're getting this as a semifinal now because the Aces were down there as the 4 seed going into this postseason where this is a matchup we've been used to seeing in the WNBA finals. And now we're going to get this in the lead up where, like Jesse said, whoever comes out of this, and you and I both think that the New York Liberty have a chance as we had these two super teams come together over the last couple seasons to finally get a one in their ledger when it comes to the most important series in their season so far. So that's going to be super exciting as we keep that part of the season rolling along for the W. But Jesse, we got training camps getting ready to open up in the NBA right now. We talked to our friend LeBron James the other day as the Lakers were back in the facility starting to work out together. But the defending champion Boston Celtics had a really interesting offseason in the lead up to their title defense now.
Yeah, so they're starting their training camp today along with the Nuggets. They're going to play 2 preseason games in Abu Dhabi. But we'll get to Ramona Shelburne's article that chronicled like the ups and downs of the offseason, the drama like you alluded to, GoJo. But we got some sound from Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown on all the Olympics drama, just one part of all the offseason debacles.
Not getting called on for the Olympic roster there, how did that make you feel, and are you carrying any of those?
Number one.
Sorry. Right off the bat. Not a lot of chances here.
Get to warm up a little.
That's how the season's going to go, man.
Is it something you're going to draw motivation from, I guess?
Want to address the, I didn't play in 2 of those games. That's what you mean?
That's part of it, yeah.
Motivation. I guess you could say that, and if you want to simplify it. In real time, it was tough. But it's and Joe, I talk to Joe a lot. Joe was probably the happiest person in the world that I didn't win Finals MVP and that I didn't play in 2 of the games in the Olympics.
So these guys win it all, and now they're still answering all these freaking questions about the offseason, about the Olympics, about all that drama.
It is pretty amazing, Dad. We talked about the Celtics core for so long. We've been trying to break these guys up for years because in their early 20s, they couldn't go out as this backcourt tandem and get the job done in the way that we saw fit. And so now that they have climbed to the mountaintop here, it seems like every bit of narrative ammo is still loaded up, ready for them to go. Do you think this makes them even more dangerous going into the season now, Dad, that they have got the confidence that comes from having gotten to the mountaintop, but it seems the motivation of people that are still doubted by their peers and media?
I mean, the amount of doubt that's gone along with them, and they finally climbed the mountain and got to the mountaintop and got to celebrate it all through a parade. And then basically that was it. It was the shortest honeymoon ever. Then we get to the Olympics where Brown's not even selected. That's the first story. And then Tatum sitting 2 games and not getting a lot of playing time in other games is the other story. And it's like, what the hell's going on? I would listen, they're human beings. And we talked about great players looking for chips to put on their shoulders to take them into the next season or the next game or the next series or whatever. In this case, the next season. I mean, Jaylen Brown's 27. Jayson Tatum's 26, I believe. It's not like these guys are old by any stretch. They're in their prime. And then they got, I think, this extra motivation. There's one thing to try and go back to back, which is difficult to do in any sport. But given how short they got to celebrate this title until the new drama unfolded in front of them, and now boom, they're back in training camp, trying to back it up again, is something. So yes, I do think there is some extra motivation for them.
And remember, I mean, you had the team sale going on this offseason as well. Like just a lot of things you don't normally associate with the team that just added another piece of hardware to one of the most prolific trophy cases in the entire NBA. So I do think, Dad, if you're a Celtics fan, you're thrilled because there is plenty. Like I know we talk about and probably overuse the chip on your shoulder thing. It's hard not to be pissed off if you're those guys. I mean, we saw Jaylen Brown over the summer clearly was upset with the notion of being left off that Olympic roster, especially after some guys went home due to injury. And then for Jayson Tatum, he clearly took that some type of way. I'm sure he's heard plenty from people all offseason about how he still didn't win the finals MVP, and he's never been a guy really considered for the regular season award. You're human, even if you are the most mild-mannered dude on planet Earth, and even if you've accomplished more than most, these guys still only get to this spot because they're A-list competitors. And so I think you combine that with the fact that, Dad, the Boston Celtics also spent a ton of money on this team this offseason to retain a bunch of the core players of this roster. They clearly believe they have a window. And we talked about this in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys where, hey, the money tells you exactly what ownership thinks of this roster. This Boston Celtics team, Brad Stevens in that front office, clearly think they've got a chance to run it back with this core based on them putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, Derek White's maybe the one that has no chip on his shoulder. He got paid and he was on the Olympic team. I mean, so worked out well for him. But yes, like I agree that there's definite motivation, and you won't hear it from Tatum. You won't hear Tatum talking bitterly. That's not his personality. He doesn't do that. But what he can internalize and get out on the court will be seen, I think. So can this team go back-to-back? Absolutely, they can go back-to-back. Time will tell. But I do think they definitely have some extra motivation, no doubt about it. They're going to have to wait for Porzingis again, though they won it basically without him in the playoffs, and he may not be ready till, December, but they've done well without him. So, yeah, I certainly think there's extra motivation.
The task now to try and repeat the last NBA team to repeat as champions, the 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors. 4 teams have repeated since the year 2000. The Miami Heat with LeBron James at the helm, the Los Angeles Lakers twice, and that Golden State Warriors run in the middle of the dynasty there. So this Boston Celtics team, the early betting favorite for a lot of people to go back and win the East and make it out of there. We'll talk about it plenty as we get towards the season. There are going to be a lot of challenges. We know what's going on with some of the youth in the West. The Oklahoma City Thunder have loaded up, but to be the best, you got to beat the best. And right now, that is still the Boston Celtics. right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of the day. Make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating. I'm serious. It helps us, and we need every little bit of help around here. And as always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review. And when you do that, you can check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, Xumo Play, Vizio Watch Free Plus, all those great places. And if you miss us or our great guests, our thanks to Jalen Naylor, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, for stopping by to talk about their hot start to the season, and our buddy Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports, who came over to talk about the UNLV quarterback situation, his beloved Raiders, and the best teams in the NFL. You miss any of that, check it out wherever you get your podcasts or right here when we get done on YouTube. This, by the way, this, that, and the third, is brought to you by our friends at Knockaround. Knockaround sunglasses have been with us since the jump. They are phenomenal, and you should get them and make them a part of your lives. They are great polarized shades that aren't going to break the bank for you at all. You can check and go get a ton of different frame styles. All of us right now modeling this here for you. I have got some of the U.S. Soccer national team sunglasses here. Dad's got the Shark Week edition shades there. Jesse has got, I guess, their version of like the Pit Vipers out here as she finger pistols. Yes, she's got permits for those, and she is ready to go. So you can check out a bunch of different frame styles at knockaround.com, a bunch of different colors. They've got MLB, NBA, NFL licensed shades, so you can rep your favorite team as you get ready to go through this season here. They have supported us, so you guys go support them. Head to knockaround.com and use code GoJo Golic to pick up your new pair of go-to polarized sunglasses. Now that we all look cool and are playing cool, let's get to this, that, and the third, and talk about something that's decidedly not cool that we saw, guys. Unfortunate story for the Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell, who had to move right now during the start of the season as his home address was publicly leaked on social media by one of his daughter's classmates earlier this year, according to a report by the Detroit News. It ultimately prompted him to sell his home after multiple instances of harassment after the close loss to the 49ers. Apparently, people were showing up while Dan Campbell was still out of town. His daughter was at home with her boyfriend, who thankfully was there and went outside and was basically flashing his lights at people that were coming by the house to say some not so great things there in a way that certainly made Dan Campbell and his wife fearful for his daughter's safety. And so dad, a guy at her school, apparently leaking this information on Snapchat because he thought it'd be funny and they were frustrated by the loss here, is just another indictment of the kind of dumbassery that can't be tolerated no matter how many changes we have in society.
It's just blows my mind. Are we supposed to give high school kids the benefit of being young and stupid? I mean, the classmate of the daughter on Snapchat accompanies with the text, dumb blank trying to go for it. Oh, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, just idiocy, just absolute idiocy. And then, do you realize this guy got your team to where you haven't been in decades? In decades. And one game, and you're going to his house to harass him. You Snapchat a quote harassing him. How stupid can you people be? Seriously. I know fan is short for fanatic, but the stupidity just outweighs the smarts in this one. To go to his house, to post on social his address, to go to his house, to give him a hard time for how well this team has done, blows my mind. Just, I don't even have words for how stupid these people are. I don't.
I mean, even if he was doing a terrible job, you have to draw the line somewhere, right? It's like, even if he's doing horribly, it's like when we talk about how like kickers get death threats, college kids get death threats after they miss a kick. Like, you gotta stop being so crazy. I know it's hard to ask people in this year of our Lord, 2024, stop being crazy, okay?
Is this your life? I mean, is this your life? Right. To drive by a coach's house? In other instances, put for sale signs in a coach's house. This is your life. This is your sad life that you have to do that. My God. It just blows my mind.
And we've seen it for years, what you described there with the for sale signs and things like that being shouted at coaches. But now all of a sudden, when it comes at the expense of the safety of your family because of the actions of someone that person goes to school with, like you're going to see them routinely after you just forced their family to uproot in a way that Dan Campbell can absorb financially. We know all that stuff. And
Sure.
Dan, by the way, could not have handled this with more grace, coming to the microphone and saying, there is no fan base I love more than ours. There is no place that I would rather coach for and lead than this Detroit team. Shouldn't have to be put in this position because of the actions of a few morons out there trying to do things like this. So hopefully cooler heads will prevail and Dan Campbell will be allowed to live his life and do his job at any level of success without being harassed by the people that he goes out there and tries to do it for. Jesse, let's get to that. Speaking of fan bases that are frustrated, in this case, deservedly so out in Oakland.
Yeah, fan bases that are definitely keeping their cool. So earlier in the week, A's owner John Fisher sent out a statement basically to the fan base saying, like, look, we tried in Oakland. We hope that you'll stay fans of us when we move to Vegas. And fans are taking that about how, as you would imagine, they're literally taking the Coliseum home with them. They're literally taking seats home with them. They're just going to dismantle this whole thing on their way out. And I think it's safe to say that wasn't the most well thought out statement from the A's owner, given all the struggles that they've had. Perhaps he should have seen this one coming.
Yeah, in general, ownership probably needed to do a lot less talking at this juncture, considering their actions have shown everyone exactly how they felt about that area. I saw Larry Beal from ABC 7 out there did a great rant on this, tearing up the statement from the A's owner and pointing out the realities of the legacy that they left behind there. So a lot of very angry people there. Anytime, Dad, you see a team uprooted from a place that believes it was done unjustly so.
Well, and you saw it with the football team, the Raiders as well, going to Oakland and getting pulled from Oakland, and the A's. It's just, this is better that an owner just be silent, just not put out a statement, not say anything. You're not going to, I don't believe there's one Oakland A fan that's going to go, oh yeah, no, it's cool. You tried. Good on you for trying. They're going to be angry, and rightly so, and taking seats home. Actually, when the Cleveland Browns stadium, when they built the new one, my brother Bob played in the old one. My parents had 2 seats in their backyard from the stadium. Now they didn't carry them out like these fans are doing.
That you know,
they got them legitimately.
Legit. It was legit.
Yeah, this is. This is one where the owner may have just wanted to take the keep the mouth zipped mode instead of trying to appease to the fans.
Outside of taking the seats, cool moments for the fans and the players who had nothing to do with any of this mess over the weekend, as the A's did start off their final homestand with a big win over the Texas Rangers there. Their top prospect, Jacob Wilson, actually got his first career walk-off, and it's been sold-out crowds there. It's been raucous people celebrating the end of a franchise being taken from them in a way that, we always know is going to be unfair to the fans. But speaking of playoffs and big moments in Major League Baseball, Jesse, let's get to a funny one for the third.
Yeah, so the Orioles clinched a playoff spot last night, so champagne bottles were popping, right? Unless you're Jackson Holliday, because he's only 20. So the Orioles set up a little baby's first clinch miss for him. Very thoughtful, very demure. My favorite part about this is the drawings, like the drawings that were posted up. I think it's a dinosaur, maybe, a Ninja Turtle. I don't know. I can't. My eyesight sucks. But yeah, it looks hysterical.
There's baby bottles in there.
Yep, baby bottles. Maybe some non-alcoholic, like some sparkling cider, perhaps.
Yeah, I bet that wasn't opened.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not.
It honestly, seeing that was really funny. Seeing Jackson Holliday and how young he actually looks is a continued reminder of my steady march to the grave. My God, to see a player that young already coming out here and being a part of that moment is insane. Great for him. Very funny moment by everyone in the locker room there, but definitely made me feel older than dirt.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that was made you feel older. How do you think it made me feel?
Wow.
I mean, unlike my mom, who is very young, you are actually old, so you should identify with that.
Nice slipping that in there, GoJo.
Hey, every once in a while, I'm capable of a smart move. We hope you make the smart move and download, subscribe, rate, review this podcast, and leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.